Welcome back, Battlefielders. Welcome back to the channel. We are going to talk about today the MAV, the MAV. And I want to talk about how to use the MAV, because people think just because it drives and you don't get to shoot as the driver, it's not worth your time. It is 1000% worth your time. It is an amazing vehicle. It takes an absolute beating. Look at it. It's like a giant shoebox or sideways toaster. The thing's a beast. It's amazing. And it's got so many gunner spots. So let's get into the loadout. And then also what I like to focus with the MAV when you are in the battlefield to, one, stay alive longer and cause absolute damage. So let's go right now. Got him. So first thing, driver seat. Like I do on my other vehicles, I always run a thermal smoke package. One, it breaks locks. Two, I don't have to worry about jets dropping bombs on me and locking onto me. And then you can break all the locks for all the other things like, you know, heat seed, rockets, javelins, all that fun stuff. Once again, like my other vehicles, I like running repair. Now, I know this is the cyber warfare protection system. This is, I believe, just hacking. I don't think this doesn't prevent the projectiles, so I always run repair. Repair fits my game mode more. It's more of a defensive style, but I like to play angles, I like to play a bit slower. I do not sit in spot, I will tell you that much, but I do like to play smart and around the map, so I use repair system because I don't have to hop out and repair myself or depend on other people, so I do like that. So that is the driver slot. Those are the two things I run. Weapon station. Here you go, pretty easy. You get a primary and a secondary. Not a lot of choices here. You shouldn't really screw this one up. This is pretty easy. These are both amazing. I like the 12.7 HMG. I run that quite a bit in my gunner seats and some of my other vehicles as well. Some of them also have a thermal version of this, which is sick. So that's really cool. And then the 40mm cannon. So just having a gunner that knows when to switch between these two, obviously between when you're going against either other armor or even planes, you can sometimes hit with this auto cannon, and then you're always switching over to personnel for the HMG and aiming down sights. So there's your weapon station. Weapon station 2. So this one you have some varieties. Let's talk about it. 50mm cannon, obviously great against other vehicles, and it's also pretty good against choppers. Pretty much good against all vehicles. A little bit harder to hit, and obviously takes is a low rate of fire. Has a reload time that's a bit, you know, it's not great when you're under fire, but it does pack a punch. So that's cool. Tow missile, I'm not really a fan of the tow missile. Obviously it's great for other armor. If there's a ton of armor on the map, or you're playing a large, like large conquest or large breakthrough, this may be something you want to think about. I like running the incendiary because, one, I think personnel kill this thing more, are more of a problem because it's so slow. It's such a huge target. It's so easy to hit it with all this different stuff. I like running the incendiary grenades, especially in, you know, in places not like Doha. If you're in cities, if you're not in wide open spaces, I would use the 40mm the grenades. If you're inside of cities, maybe the 50mm cannon's better. Obviously the 50mm cannon, 50mm cannon for wide open spaces is what you want, because you got nice long sight lines. If you're in tight spaces, tight quarters, in the jungle, whatever that needs to look like, I'd run the incendiary. I usually run the incendiary, one, because I love the way it looks on the map, and two, it's pretty awesome to take out or deter personnel away from you. Weapon pod. So this is where you can really get your anti-vehicle help from. So it's just why I run the weapon 2 station more for personnel with the incendiary grenade. The weapon pod, I run the 60mm mortar, because that thing is devastating against other vehicles. Obviously not a good against air. It's very hard to hit choppers and planes with the mortar round. I have shot a plane out of the sky with a mortar round. I just want you to know. So if you ever need a backup gunner, I am up for hire. But inside of this, you know, this is personnel. Kinetic pod is kind of personnel. Canister shot pod is kind of personnel. Rocket weapon pod, a little bit of both. It's effective against armored vehicles. 40mm volley pod to me is a total waste of time. I'd run the 60mm. If you do not have the 60mm yet, I would probably run the kinetic pod, or the kinetic grenade, or the canister shot pod here, sorry, and then I would run the 50mm cannon as your anti-vehicle. Same thing in all vehicles, and what I will tell you on all these types of reviews and how to get better with vehicles vehicles is you need a diverse weapon set. So if you have some weapon stations that are heavy anti-personnel, you want to run other weapon stations that are heavy anti-vehicle. So 50mm cannon with the canister shot pod, brilliant. If you're running the mortar pod here, that is heavy against vehicles and does pretty well against personnel, but then here you can run anti-personnel. So remember, you just want to keep the diversity of weapon choices so that you are defended against all the things you're going to run into in the battlefield. So 60mm pod here for me. If you do not have that yet, I would run the canister shot pod because I think it's pretty excellent against personnel, and I'd swap back here and go back to the 50mm cannon. Keep your defenses against all things you're going to see. That is my major tip there. So coming over here, this is pretty easy. Sensor array detection pulse, that's pretty standard. I think I don't have the thermal because I don't sit in that seat very much. I need to sit in it more, obviously, to get this thermal array, but I don't have that unlocked yet. So those are what I run. Main thing you want to focus on here is give your gunners options to kill everything that's going to be coming at you. So if you have heavy, like I said, personnel in one, go anti-vehicle in another. When you're using this in the battlefield, this thing you can be a bit more aggressive on, unlike maybe like the Wildcat and things like that doesn't have as much armor. You can get taken out a lot quicker. This thing is an absolute monster. So it is made for, you know, transporting personnel and then getting in there and getting crazy. So don't be afraid to take this right into points. Watch out for anti-tank mines because this is obviously a giant moving target. You usually have to go along paths or roads, so there will be plenty of anti-tank mines. One thing I will say, like I will say with all vehicles, besides getting in there and doing work and not being afraid to get this thing a bit damaged and dirty, do not sit still, because this thing, one, is slow. So it's easy to get C5 on. It's easy to get anti-tank mines on or behind. So you got to keep moving. All vehicles, number one rule I try to have is never sit still. As soon as you sit still, you're an absolute sitting duck. This thing is a giant metal toaster of a duck, and you don't want to do that. So keep moving. Make sure you're getting in there and helping out your team and being a spawn point as well, because this thing obviously is a giant spawn point. If you don't have all the seats filled, which is pretty amazing to get people close to the points. The other thing is this one, I wouldn't worry about playing angles as much because it's more of an offensive vehicle. Wildcat, I tell people to try to play your angles. Same kind of thing with the tank. Obviously it is a tank, but the tanks are giant beacons to get beat up on as well, and I like playing angles with the tank. But this thing, I'm quite aggressive with it, which is why I have quite a few weapon stations that are focused on personnel, because I'm usually in the crap with this thing. Don't be afraid to beat it up and get dirty. Just keep swimming, like Dory says from Finding Nemo. Keep swimming, keep moving, and you will certainly stay alive longer and get a lot more kills. That's my loadout. Those are my highlights, or those are my tips for staying alive longer in the MAV and killing a lot more personnel. So I hope to see you out on the battlefield, and we will catch you on the next one.